Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and today I'm going to take on a Daiwa Sealine 50H model. This is an older reel, but it's a workhorse. It's one that if you have in your kit bag is a great one for bigger fish. This one happens to be spooled with 25-pound test, and in the 25-pound test this thing can hold about 350 yards of line. It's been around for quite some time now. It's no longer in production. They still continue to make the Sealine product, just not the 50H. If you have the 50H, you know what this one's all about. If you don't, stand by. You'll learn some as I go about service and maintenance on this one. You may also have a 300 or a 400H series that followed this one. There's some minor differences in the tune-up procedures, but overall it's basically the same reel. So I always start by removing the gear side plate and take that apart. And while I'm doing that, I've been doing reels for over 20 years now. I've been recently using the YouTube channel to show my experience and to help you out if you have an older reel. I work on all kinds of reels. If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to my channel, and if you like this particular video, please indicate that on the YouTube like section there. I also answer all comments and questions in that section, so if you are have a question about the particular service, please ask and I'll go ahead and do that. This one you can tell is in very good condition, even though it's probably a 25 or 30-year-old reel. What I like about the reel is it's got two ball bearings. It's got a ball bearing on the non-gear side. It also has a ball bearing in here as the secondary one, which makes this a good casting reel in addition to just a conventional reel. And we'll get started. We're going to lubricate the bearings. Now for bearings, I like to use oil. I use a Real-X oil, and just a little bit on the bearing itself is fine, and maybe a little shot on the clicker mechanism as well. That gear side is done. You could, if you like, put a little bit of blue grease on the tail end here where that goes into the spool. So, and for blue grease, I happen to use Penn's Precision Reel Grease. It's a commonly available product. You could use other blue greases out there. I like to say in my videos to those of you who may be new to this, I don't recommend using axle grease. It's too thick, and the axle grease tends to draw contaminants. I also do not like to use Vaseline, which is a petroleum jelly. It's too thin and wears away too quickly. Okay, we're on the gear side now. This is very similar in nature to any other conventional reels that you have out there, Penn in particular. You start by removing the set screw which holds the handle nut in place. And I always keep a parts tray on hand. I put all my parts in there. This happens to be the bottom of a fast food container, nothing fancy, but the parts tray lets me know where they will be when I'm finished. This nut is identical to the Penn reels conventional nuts. So I'm actually using an aftermarket Penn handle nut tool here. But if you have a Penn handle nut tool, that will work as well. I imagine Daiwa makes them. I haven't seen them, but I've also known that the Penn nut is the same, so I haven't gone looking for it. Okay, this is a good time to tell you, if you're not familiar with the reel, take pictures as we go along so that you know where the pieces and parts are. We've taken off the handle and the handle nut. There's a handle spring tensioner that goes next. And then there's the star drag nut, which reverses by going counterclockwise. That'll remove the star drag, and it will also give you access to the bridge plate assembly. Now we have two spacer nuts here. Interesting to note on these spacer nuts, they are concave, which means they have a bend to them. They can go in 2 or 3 different pairings. You can go back to back and create a gap. You can go you can go line up and create 0 space, or you can flip them and go face to face. In this case, that's a flush fitting. So notice how they came off. It's all about the drag sensitivity in these. Okay, and then we have access to the plate itself. These screws generally stay in the side plate. They can come out, I guess, over time but generally they stay right where they are. All right, this is a flat-bladed screwdriver. I suggest that when you set up your bench, make sure you have both flat and Phillips head. In this case, either one can be used, but they have a through slot for the flat-bladed, and I find that as I start this off, I use the flat-bladed. Now this last one here, which holds the dog assembly, actually has a nut on that. So again, remembering that, I use a pliers to hold that nut while I take the last piece off, because I notice this has got some Loctite on it. And I'm just not having a lot of luck there. So let's see if we can get it to stop spinning. I think we're doing good here. All right, we got it out. Good. All right, and we'll show you the back end. Now you notice I'm cupping my hand. One of the things you don't notice is that nut, is that I didn't have that protective glove on. Sometimes I go on a mental holiday as well, so I'm going to go put that protective glove on. Those of you that watch the videos know that I like to keep the grease and grime off my hands that are not working. So go ahead and do that if you have it. I also cup the reel so that when this main assembly does come off after I've released all of the bridge nuts, that nothing goes springing out of it. Now I've worked on these reels in the past. I know that there's nothing that's going to jump there. There's only one spring that has the potential to do that. That's the dog spring. Unfortunately, I know where that one goes. So looks like we're still stuck here with some of the screw. One of the things I'm always reminded of in reel repair, they say you need a screwdriver, you need patience, and you need a sense of humor in order to do reel repair. And they didn't say which order that's needed, but I certainly appreciate it. Okay, all of this has come out together now. We have the transition pieces to the free spool. We have the dog assembly, which is still attached, interestingly enough. We have the main gear, and one of the springs from that cross assembly has fallen out. So let's go ahead and show you how to take this apart. Showed you how to take it apart, put it back together again after servicing. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do, here's your second bearing, which is sitting in the side plate. We're going to oil that. Again, using that Real X oil, just a nice little dab of the oil. We're going to use the blue grease on the free spool lever release. Not a lot, but enough. We're going to go reinstall the free spool transition pieces, collar, and gear. Okay, so this is your transition piece. This is your collar and gear. There's been some buildup of tarnish there, so I'm just going to take that excess grease off with a scrubby pad. If you needed something more than that, you could use steel wool. You could use a metal cleaner if it was seriously corroded, but in this case, this is in good condition. You also notice I've left the parts on the table here. Usually, I'm going to do that right now with parts like the springs for the dogs and that. I'm going to put those in the parts bucket, and I'm going to reassemble here, which is kind of why I left them on the table. However, notice that you can just reach over and a cuff of your shirt can grab one of those parts, send it flying, and you'll be spending more time looking for it than you really wanted to. Okay, then we're just going to press down on that gear assembly. Once we have that, we're going to insert that over the top, and this is how your free spooling mechanism works. You have your free spool release lever, you have your transition piece, you have your collar, and you have your spool gear. Notice on the spool gear that the ring side is out. There's an indentation in there that the spring rides on. It's easy enough to reverse those and cause the reel to not operate properly. I'm going to set that off to the side. There's one screw that's still in that side plate. The other three I'm going to go put in my parts basket for now. And we'll go ahead and do the drag assembly. Now the drag assembly has got a collar on it, and then it's got the gear set. So it's got a thick ring first. And this reel is in very good condition for being 20 plus years old. So it's a good example to show you how these work. Okay, so we have a thick collar, which is the first piece. That's what your assembly rides on, the ferrule, to press down on the gears. And this one hasn't been used in forever, and it's been tightened down. So another time to give you a good tip here, if you're not using your reel back to drag off, because what happens over time is that the drags themselves that have the lubrication on them dry up, and they become welded to the metal washers, and it's an ineffective drag after that. So I'll show you how to clean those up and lubricate them properly to keep them good for years of service. This reel's in good condition. These Quirk drag sets here are very good, other than the lubrication is worn off of them. So this is what I was saying before about cleaning up metal pieces. Use a light steel wool, a 4-0 steel wool, and that'll just clean up some of that dried grease on these. And that'll help your drags to operate more efficiently. Make sure you get all of them. If you're taking pictures before, you noted the sequence that these drags came out in. I know the sequence. I didn't take a picture, but I should remind you as you go to clean up the metal ones, for example. I might be taking them out of order, and then you have one of those aha moments when it was like, where did that one go? And I have to be honest with you, I've taken some reels apart, and I've looked at it and kind of said, what were they thinking as they put it back? Because everything was in wrong. I've had them where they've stacked the fabrics up and stacked the metals up and some other things. But this is how it goes. It goes the main gear body, and it goes a fabric, metal washer, a fabric. There's an eared washer that always goes in the middle. That's the same sequence almost as the pens. And then you have the top collar, and then you have the ferrule that releases that. So one more quick clean here, just to get some of that residual off the bottom. Check the main check the main pinion gear. We insert that over the top of that. While I have this open, I'm going to go put a drop of oil in that pinion gear. And then I'm going to use a drag grease to keep these lubricated and flexible so that they don't fail in the future. And it's just a light coating on each. I use a Cal's Universal Drag Grease. It's one of the best on the market that I find. And I will do that as I put each one in. So I put the first one in. You don't need to lubricate the metal ones. And this is why I wear that protective glove as well. When you work close to your fingers, you're going to get some of that grease on you, and I'd rather have it on the glove than on me. Okay, second one goes in. This is where the eared washer, the ear washer being the one that has the two points sticking out of it, go in. And there's a corresponding indentation in the side of the main gear where those two lobes fit. Make sure that you have that seated properly. If you bend them, it's not going to work. You'll just jam up your reel and it won't turn. Okay, so that's the last of the fabrics then. And we're going to put the metal on top. If you're remembering your sequence after that, it goes with the thick washer. It goes with the ferrule. And then we're ready to reinstall here. So we've got the top side done. What you're not noticing is the dog that's still sitting in there, but the dog can be installed afterwards. And so we'll take this, we'll press down on that gearing assembly to get clearance. We'll bring this in, and then you heard the snap. The snap works where this actually sits on two plastic studs. That dog belongs on the back end of this one with that little nut. The dog sits this way with the indentation being for the spring. And most of the time you can work that dog in just like I did there, where you slip it behind it. And then if you have a little pin, can't find my little pin, but if you have something to line that hole up, perhaps a screwdriver here, or the like, then you can reinstall. Okay, we're almost there. We just got the click, so the dog is sitting properly now. And I just do 1 or 2 turns on that, remembering that we have that nut that also sits on the back of that one, so I'll come through on that. Okay, before we go any further with that, we want to make sure we put the other the other bridge screws in. In this case, all of these bridge screws are the same, so it doesn't matter which sequence or where you put them. On the pen reel, some of you know that the bottom screws are fully threaded. In this case, all of these screws are partially threaded, which is okay. And I'm going to use the Phillips head to tighten these down. I use the flat-bladed screwdriver when I take them out because it gives me a little bit more torque. And sometimes on these reels have a habit of having salt and corrosion gather in those cups where these things sit. And if that's the case, then I really don't want to get stuck with that. Okay, now I left that other one partially backed off there with the dog. I'm going to go put that little nut back on now. Just holding it on the back should give me enough tension there to get that nut on. Some of the times you'll see these reels do not have those nuts on them. That's okay too. There's no, it's not going to slip out. It's just an extra precaution there. Okay, so we've got that nut pretty much back on. I'm actually hand tightening it at the moment. And I just grab a needle nose pliers to finish that last half. Okay, and then the last part of that dog then is to put the spring back on. I like to put the spring back on from the top. It connects to that post on the bridge. And the only reason I like to do that is it's a little bit more difficult to grab that piece there. As you can see, I'm having some difficulty as it is. You leave that hang. And then a needle nose pliers generally will be good enough to grab that and hook that around the bottom. Sometimes not so. It's just what I was saying before about the patience. Now I'm going to grab my pin and see if we can do it that way. We can. Okay. So that's the way that the anti-reverse dog works. And you'll see it in operation there where it stops the back pedaling of the reel. One last piece then on the lubrication of this. I grabbed some blue grease up top here. And we're ready to reinstall the reel. So it really is a fairly simple maintenance process once you get started. It's only going to take a few minutes, but it's going to help you last the season on that. And it's just a matter of lining up the screws in the screw holes. And I'm not lined up here. That should be it. Sometimes I have to cheat and peek that thing. There we go. All right, found it. Like I said, patience is a key. Screwdriver, patience, and a sense of humor goes along with it. These actually have thumb screws on them. The reel's in good conditions. You can actually tighten a lot of this by hand. Some of the ones that have been calcified and have the grit and grime of it from the wear and tear on the reel, not so much. So I still don't have that right. See, even as much as you know, you can mess them up. I had this a quarter turned the wrong way. Okay, we should be good there. And I apologize for this, but better that I make the mistake than you. There we go. So if you're trying this at home, just try it with a little bit of patience. You will get it eventually. That should be it. For all the times I've worked on these reels, this hidden sight, because I've left the screws in, is just like playing hide and seek sometimes, but I've got them now. All right, lessons learned. And then the three of them you tighten up, and then just a quarter of a turn with the screwdriver once you have them in is enough to leave the tension on that. So I apologize for that dead air there, and I'd rather do it right and be slow than rush something for the sake of finishing a video a minute early and having a problem with that. If you remember, we have the two set washers next. They do have an oblong feature to it, so it kind of sits where you can't mess it up terribly. And we have the star screw, star drag next. if you catch the drag, you can put a Phillips head screwdriver inside that. Don't press down a lot. You don't want to strip the screws for the handle nut. That will hold it for you until you're able to get the handle on. You remember the handle tensioner spring was next. And then we have the handle itself. This is a leveraged handle. It was sitting on the higher side. I'm going to put it back on the lower side. You don't need all of that leverage all the time, so I use the lower end of this one most of the time. And now we're just simply going to line up that handle nut with the set screw. There are the ridges in this nut, and you won't be able to put the set screw in unless you have an alignment there. This is an aftermarket handle. I like the handle because it gives you extra leverage. It's available on penparts.com. I've been asked that question on other videos. It's about somewhere between $15 and $20 plus shipping. So if you do a lot of reel work, go ahead and get yourself one of those. You'll find that there's a great advantage to it. Okay, there we go. Last thing, we're just going to back off this tensioner a little bit there. And we've got a reel that's going to last the next season and last for many years to come. So I hope you've enjoyed that. What we've done today is we've showed you how to take this reel apart, how to lubricate the side bearing that's not on the gear side, how to take the pieces and parts off on this side, lubricate the bearing that's sitting on the gear side plate, take the idle transition assembly off to make sure it's clean and lube, and then lastly we showed you how to pull the drags out, how to lubricate them with a drag grease like a Cal's Universal Drag Grease, how to reinstall that stack, reinstall the bridge, and then put the anti-reverse dog mechanism in place. And we showed you probably what not to do because these 3 screws are offset. I got them wrong the first time, and how to take that back and line them up properly and then reset those screws. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please subscribe to my channel and please indicate that you've liked this. I'm sharing my experience, as I mentioned. I post several times a week, and hopefully I've helped you learn a little bit more about the reel and take the next step in terms of properly maintaining your reel for the seasons to come. Thank you again. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle.